Let's check in on the current thing. Nowhere have people been more vehement to support the current thing than when it comes to Ukrainian refugees. This has led directly to economic migrants and students who definitely aren't Ukrainian or refugees, wantonly abusing the system at the expense of genuine needy Ukrainian refugees. We were delighted to have the opportunity to welcome a group of brave, resilient people to Dr. Hyde Park today. They have travelled to Roscommon to find refuge from the horrors of the war in Ukraine. Who wants to tell them? If the current thing is doing everything we can to support Ukrainian refugees, does it matter that significant numbers of them appear to not be Ukrainian or refugees?
Look at me, sure. Look at me, sure.
I'm Ukrainian.
No.
Here's more diverse Ukrainian refugees arriving in Bordeaux in France, where a full third of Ukrainian refugees were discovered to be economic migrants mainly coming from Africa. Apparently those Russian missiles were so powerful they moved Ukraine to a different continent. The Irish government is so keen to support the current thing, the per capita equivalent of America accepting over 13 million, they vowed to take in 200,000 Ukrainian refugees, including these good old Slavic 60-year-olds who landed at Dublin airport last week.
They're just nationals of Ukraine, passport. Okay,
yeah,
so you're a Ukrainian citizen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ireland says they'll build 35,000 new homes for Ukrainian refugees, even while Irish people themselves are struggling to find homes to accommodate the newcomers, presumably forgetting that refugees are only supposed to be refugees while there's a war on. Then they're supposed to go home and help their country rebuild. 200,000 is nothing.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
The German Green Party is demanding Germany accept 8 to 10 million Ukrainian refugees. The entire Ukrainian population is only 41 million. Seems there just aren't enough Ukrainian refugees to go around.
Kensington Council, hello. Where's my Ukrainian? Yes, I requested one 2 weeks ago now. Still no sign. Well, I'm keen to get one before the neighbours get theirs. Yes, they beat us to it with the Tesla and the Cockapoo. Yes, that's my request. Yes. Quiet woman, perfect English, experienced cleaner, needs to find her own accommodation.
Actual Ukrainian refugees seem to be a finite resource, which is why the current thing crowd are seemingly happy to import them from third world countries that have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Ukraine. Also note how current thing king, President Zelensky, is very keen on piggybacking regime narratives onto existing popular support for the current thing.
Російська агресія проти України та проти усього, на чому побудоване життя у Європі, є аргументом, щоб прискорювати зелену трансформацію на континенті.
Of course, green energy is completely shite, totally inadequate to meet demand, and has already almost bankrupted Western economies like Spain. It only leads to soaring energy costs that poor people can't afford to pay. But hey, if it's a key part of the current thing, maybe we all need to get behind it. What's next? Zelensky urging us to embrace drag queen story time or transgender representation in female sports as a crucial part of the war effort.
Hey guys, I'm in the women's restroom.
Current thing, selective outrage, socially engineered outrage. The regime is so easily able to redirect people's cognitive impulses virtually overnight. It's both depressing and quite frightening. COVID. War. The difference between a bog-standard dictatorship and a ruthless totalitarian state is that a ruthless totalitarian state requires the aid of vast numbers of its own population to ideologically enforce it, and we're now well on the road to that society in the once free West. A poll in Canada found that vaccinated people are far more likely to risk World War III over Ukraine by supporting aggressive measures against Russia, while unvaccinated people are more likely to support diplomatic measures. NPCs seamlessly transferred from being deathly afraid of a virus which didn't kill 99% plus, depending on age group of people who caught it, to mindlessly lobbying for no-fly zones and military escalation that could very well cause nuclear Armageddon. Another poll found huge support for the current thing, support Ukraine. But when asked what they'd do if they were invaded like Ukraine, the majority of Democrats said they'd flee the country. It seems that mass support for whatever current thing the political class and the culture demands has become a form of cognitive addiction. Having been completely atomized from their communities, their families and their own culture, humanity is seemingly dependent on defining itself on lurching from one current thing crisis to another, then weaponizing it to ostracize, publicly shame and deplatform dissidents who dare suggest that all may not be as it seems. Support for the current thing is dependent on the vitriolic denunciation of those who don't support the current thing. Much like anyone who merely questioned the efficacy of lockdown measures or mask mandates was brutally smeared as a dangerous anti-vaxxer. You're either with the current thing or you're against it. There's no room for nuance or critical thinking, only total ideological compliance. And now it will be government enforced. Authorities are threatening giant fines and prison time for anyone displaying symbols that contradict the current thing. Public figures are being ordered to profess their unquestioning subservience to the current thing or face career ruination. Big tech giants openly welcome and facilitate threats of violence against those who don't support the current thing. Seems support for the current thing is always reliant upon state oppression, public humiliation, and establishment coerced consent, meted out against anyone who doesn't support the current thing. Which is why the counter meme to the "I support the current thing" meme makes absolutely no sense. I support the opposite of the current thing. Cool story, bro, but those two things clearly aren't the same. There's absolutely no negative consequences for supporting the current thing. Social media dopamine, high status symbol signaling, establishment endorsement. Whereas the consequences for opposing the current thing can be life deforming, deplatforming, being fired from your job, being ostracized by your friends and family, being made an example of by the establishment, prison sentences and punitive fines. There's an entire cancel culture, legacy media, fact-checker industrial complex that bludgeons people into accepting the received wisdom, the current thing, on pain of their lives being eviscerated and wrecked if they don't. I also think that a lot of the feckless zeal to support this new current thing is the lingering doubt that they were on the wrong side of history in relation to the previous current thing.
Fourth booster, fuckers! Oh, and CVS gave us 8 free COVID tests for getting boosted.
A vaccine so good you get given 8 free COVID tests after taking a 4th dose of it. If only they get it right this time, maybe everyone will forget about the previous current thing. And I'm not saying everyone who supports Ukraine has been brainwashed into doing so. Many people support Ukraine for good reasons, which they've developed a detailed knowledge of. But let's face it, the vast majority haven't. They only support Ukraine because of the fear of what society would think of them if they didn't. They only support Ukraine because they've been relentlessly engineered by the regime to do so. Or they only support Ukraine because they've realized it's the latest means of signaling their virtue, of broadcasting their esteemed membership in the high-status symbol club. Restaurants now requiring proof of Ukraine support. This dude really is a big fan of the current thing. Whether it be Ukraine, vaccines, or mask mandates, he has all the emoticons. He must be a really good person who tweets fantasies about watching people who think differently from him die in a gutter. Hashtag be kind. The Ukrainian flag is just another symbol, and it's completely interchangeable with whatever the regime decides is the current thing. It's merely another tribalist motif for the masses to embrace, so they can feel part of some kind of meaningful greater cause. An inadequate substitute for the total absence of genuine meaning and authenticity in their own lives. Vacuous vassals devoid of original thoughts or personalities. Biological units, wholly products of advertising and social engineering.
Are you watching the US-Panama soccer game right now? If not, you need to turn it on. In the US supporters section, their gay pride and Ukraine flags sewn together. The memes are real.
Better yet, why not incorporate the new current thing, the Ukrainian flag, into the LGBT flag? I'm sure they can find room, but some current things are more current than others. I don't see any symbols of support for the people of Yemen. 377,000 people killed in Western-backed Saudi airstrikes. 10,000 children killed since 2015. Why has that never been the current thing? Why do we never see Saudi public figures being pressured to denounce that atrocity? Because the same regime that decides on what the current thing will be has been actively facilitating facilitating and supporting that atrocity for the past 7 years. Current thing cultists can't be convinced otherwise. Not even by the literal threat of the extinction of humanity, which is apparently worth it to support the current thing. Not even by their current thing heroes committing war crimes on camera. Not even by their current thing heroes calling up the mothers of prisoners of war to gloat about how they killed them. Not even by their current thing heroes being literal neo-Nazis. A Nazi! From Ukraine? Ah. Yeah, they may be Nazis, but they're our Nazis. They're moderate Nazis. New and better methods for broadcasting the necessity for everyone to support the current thing are being perfected by the regime. In London, a gigantic Globe concert hall will utilise a wraparound video screen to project advertising. And of course, regular reminders to support the current thing when it's so easy for the regime to enlist support for the current thing. That's where totalitarianism finds its roots. Because the current thing could be anything. And as history shows, it almost always ends up being the dehumanization, persecution, and elimination of those who refuse to support the current thing.
It's absolutely crucial for you to help me fight the war on free speech by supporting me via Subscribe Star, link in description, and also signing up for my free newsletter at summit.news/newsletter.